October 21st, 1805. Off the coast of Cape Trafalgar in Spain. One of the most decisive naval battles in history is about to unfold. This wasn't just another clash of ships. It was the culmination of years of tension. A high-stakes gamble that would determine the fate of empires and secure Britain's dominance of the seas for the next 100 years. To really get why Trafalgar was such a big deal, we need to rewind a bit. At the dawn of the 19th century, Europe was in turmoil. Napoleon Bonaparte, Emperor of the French, had conquered most of the continent. His ambition was boundless, but one stubborn island nation stood in his way: Great Britain. Protected by the English Channel, Britain was a fortress, and its Royal Navy was the key to its defense. Napoleon knew he couldn't just march his grand army across the water. He needed to control the sea, even if just for a short time, to ferry his invasion force of over 200,000 soldiers from Boulogne to the shores of Kent. His plan was elaborate. He assembled a massive combined fleet of French and Spanish ships, aiming to lure the British Royal Navy away from the Channel, gain temporary control, and then launch his invasion. The man tasked with stopping him was Vice-Admiral Horatio Nelson. Nelson was already a national hero, a naval genius known for his bold, unconventional tactics. He was a brilliant leader who inspired fierce loyalty in his men. But he was also outnumbered. The combined fleet under French Admiral Waterloo had 33 ships of the line, while Nelson had just 27. On paper, the odds were not in his favor. For months, it was a cat-and-mouse game across the Atlantic. The French fleet sailed to the West Indies, hoping to draw the British away. Nelson gave chase, but Villeneuve managed to slip away and return to Europe, eventually taking refuge in the port of Cadiz in Spain. Napoleon was furious at the delays. He ordered Villeneuve to break out of Cadiz and sail for the Mediterranean. This was the moment Nelson had been waiting for. As the combined fleet sailed out on that fateful October morning, they formed a traditional single line of battle, a long crescent-shaped wall of ships. Standard naval tactics of the day involved two opposing lines, sailing parallel to each other, blasting away until one side gave up. It was predictable, often indecisive, and led to long, drawn-out slugfests. But Nelson had no intention of playing by the rules. He had a radical, high-risk plan. He would divide his smaller fleet into two columns and sail them directly at the enemy line, perpendicular to it. The goal was to punch through their formation, break it into smaller, chaotic groups, and then destroy them in a close-quarters brawl, or a pell-mell battle, as he called it. This tactic, known as the Nelson touch, was incredibly dangerous. As his ships approached, they would be unable to fire their main broadside cannons, while the enemy ships could rake them with devastating fire from bow to stern. It was a gamble that relied on speed, surprise, and the superior gunnery and seamanship of the British crews. Nelson led one column in his flagship HMS Victory. His second-in-command, Admiral Collingwood, led the other in HMS Royal Sovereign. As they closed in, Nelson famously sent a signal to the fleet that would echo through history. England expects that every man will do his duty. It was a masterstroke of leadership, a call to arms that galvanized every sailor in the fleet. Just as planned, Collingwood's column smashed into the rear of the combined fleet's line. Royal Sovereign was the first to engage, cutting through the enemy formation and unleashing hell with both its port and starboard broadsides. For 15 long minutes, it fought alone, surrounded and pounded by enemy fire, until the rest of the column caught up. Meanwhile, Nelson steered Victory directly towards the center of the enemy line, aiming for Villeneuve's flagship, Bucentaur. Victory endured a terrifying barrage of fire for nearly 40 minutes. Its sails shredded, its wheels shot away, and its decks littered with casualties. But it pressed on. Finally, it broke through the line, unleashing a catastrophic broadside into the stern of Bucentaur, dismasting it and killing or wounding hundreds of its crew in a single devastating blast. The battle descended into the chaos Nelson had intended. The organized line of the combined fleet was shattered. British ships surrounded isolated pockets of French and Spanish vessels, their superior training and faster rate of fire making a brutal difference. British gun crews could fire a broadside every 90 seconds, often twice as fast as their opponents. The fighting was ferocious and at point-blank range. Amidst the smoke and thunder, a tragedy unfolded. Around 1 o'clock, as Nelson walked the quarterdeck of Victory, he was struck by a musket ball fired from the rigging of the French ship Redoubtable. The shot entered his shoulder and pierced his lung. He was carried below deck, mortally wounded. But even as he lay dying, his mind was on the battle. He received constant updates, and his strategic genius continued to shape the fight. When told of the overwhelming victory that 15 enemy ships had been taken, he was relieved. His last words were, "Thank God, I've done my duty." Horatio Nelson died knowing his audacious plan had succeeded beyond all expectations. By late afternoon, the battle was over. It was a stunning, overwhelming victory for the British. Not a single British ship was lost, though many were heavily damaged. The combined fleet, on the other hand, was annihilated. 22 of their 33 ships were captured or destroyed. Thousands of French and Spanish sailors were killed or wounded, compared to around 1,700 British casualties. The consequences of Trafalgar were immediate and profound. Napoleon's dream of invading Britain was shattered forever. He had lost the naval capacity to challenge British control of the English Channel. He was forced to turn his attention back to the continent, leading to his campaigns in Austria and beyond. But he would never again pose a direct threat to the British Isles. More than that, the Battle of Trafalgar established a century of undisputed British naval supremacy. With the French and Spanish navies crippled, the Royal Navy ruled the waves unchallenged. This maritime dominance was the foundation of the British Empire's expansion throughout the 19th century. It protected global trade routes, secured colonies from Africa to Asia, and allowed Britain to project its power across the globe. This era became known as the Pax Britannica, a period of relative peace in which British naval power enforced a global order. So when we look back at that single brutal afternoon off the coast of Spain, we're seeing more than just a naval battle. We're seeing the moment a brilliant, daring admiral secured his nation's future, ended the greatest threat it had faced in centuries, and ushered in an age where the sun, quite literally, never set on the British Empire. The echo of Trafalgar's cannons shaped the world we live in today. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into history, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next story.
See you next time.